Well, welcome back, guys, to another episode of Lessons into Blessings podcast. I have the pleasure of having on with me a dynamic duo couple. Met them about maybe a little over a year or so ago, and they are originally from California. Joseph Lopez started investing in the 1995 time period. They both transitioned to the East Texas market in search of a better market and in search of really being able to accelerate that financial freedom. So I'm excited to have them on as a couple, my first couple guest, and really just talking about the power of a team, especially when you're married. It's so important. They've been able to do so many things in real estate. So I will have them bring them on right now. If you can introduce with me, Joseph and Ida Lopez. Hey guys.
Hi.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good, really good. Really excited to be part of your program and your podcast. Thank you so much for having us on.
Thank you for having us on, Tree.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. I loved your spirit when I first met you guys, and so this has probably been a long time coming. And I think when I first met you guys, Ida, you were still working but making the transition over into the business. So
Yes.
I want to say that Joseph has officially retired you into the business. Is that safe to say?
Yes, officially as of October 17th of last year. I'm officially
That is
retired
so
from the government.
awesome. That is so awesome. So I want to talk a little bit about your guys' journey, kind of how you transitioned not only into real estate, but transitioned into kind of the Texas market and how you made that shift. Can you just tell us a little bit about just how you started down the real estate journey?
Sure. It started basically in like 1993, and I was leaving my W-2 job, entering into real estate. And I thought it'd be nice to become a realtor. So I started as a real estate agent, basically representing your typical home buyers and sellers, and so forth. Several years into my journey, I started to meet investors that were interested in buying these ugly, dilapidated properties, which I didn't see any value. And I was like, okay, if that's what you want me to write up an offer on, that's fine. And as we started to represent them, I realized that they were into something. I always wanted to be on the other side of the fence. So after multiple years of representing a lot of different investors, buying houses, fixing up, tear downs, I started to recognize the pattern here. So we ended up, our journey began in Los Angeles and LA County, and that's where we represented a lot
Tough market.
Yeah. And we branched into Riverside County and San Bernardino County, and those are the areas in which we operated. And this all happened in the late 90s and the early 2000s. Right around 2005, we had invested in a lot of properties together, and we actually sold in 2007, right before the subprime market meltdown.
Oh man,
so we were
lucky exit.
Yes, but I think that after a while of representing and also acquiring a couple of properties here and there, it was really at the beginning of 2012, so just a little over 10 years ago, that I kind of decided I want to do this just for myself and become a full-time real estate investor. And now, although I had my license still in California, I was more of an investor who happened to be licensed as opposed to a realtor who also invested. And so when I made that shift, it opened up a lot of doors, a lot of new colleagues, business relations, and we started to do everything from wholesale deals to buy at public auction to, in addition to that, buy and hold properties. Our license allowed us to be able to also have a property management company. So we did the property management, very exhausting. There's not a lot of money involved. The service industry is very regulated, but it's a very good learning experience. Mm-hmm. It is an incredible learning experience. So we did that for a while, and we were doing a couple of different things. What I think really catapulted into scaling our investment journey was meeting other like-minded individuals, real estate investors that wanted to team up and collaborate. And then we started to scale. Then we started to I think at some point in time, we brought in a construction company that we own. And so that helped us with curbing costs because we could control our material costs, and buy in bulk. We could also be able to control our labor costs. So that helped us. And then ultimately, though, because we lived in California, we lived in the bubble, we didn't know what it was like to invest out of state. We had no idea
Right.
because that wasn't something that nobody ever teaches you to start to grow into the United States, as opposed to just a little market territory that you happen to live in or work in. So I think after a while, we started to dive into learning a little bit about, business-friendly states and landlord-friendly
That's
states.
good.
And of course, California is not one of those. So
Right.
we ventured into Arizona and Texas and Tennessee and Florida and Georgia. And we picked Texas because we had so many associations. We knew people, we had invested in other people that were living here, that were working here. They could give us a lot of resources. And so we made Texas the first stop, and that happened back in 2019. And
Okay.
so eventually, though, we relocated not only our company, but we actually relocated staff. And then we officially bought in 2020 and made our move last year.
Wow. There's so much in there to unpack. Tons. I'm gonna roll back the reel a little bit, right? Because
Sure.
people want to know, wow, that was a huge transition. Number one, I think you couldn't have learned in a better market, because if you're gonna cut your teeth, cut it in the worst market.
Exactly. Baptism by fire.
I mean, from a property management standpoint, you probably had even more challenges just because it's not a landlord-friendly state,
Right.
being in California. So learn it in that market, and obviously all those learnings you're able to take into more landlord-friendly states. So let's roll back to just you jumped in, you were starting to do deals as an agent with other investors. How did you start to just build those relationships? Just help people to know a little bit of how you built relationships to even start to get the aha, right? A lot of people, they sell single family homes to people who are looking for their next home, but somehow you went down the investor route. What made you kind of choose that route and then really build your clientele base?
Well, one of the things that I saw that was very interesting was that, the consumer sometimes thinks of an investor as just this money-hungry individual or individuals or an entity that is just going to capitalize on the market and make a profit. That part may be true, and there's some good investors and bad investors, just like in any case, any career choice. However, when you see the impact that it has on housing and how you can actually impact housing and make money on the process, then I thought that was pretty interesting because, as a real estate agent, I had the experience of having a little girl, wrap their arm around my leg and say, "Thank you for my bedroom," which was very emotionally touching. But as an investor, I got to find people that were looking for homes, didn't know how to get into a home. Maybe they lacked money or they didn't have enough qualifications. And after you start to build rapport with a lot of people, from investors and colleagues and sellers and buyers and lenders, you can actually pull together all the resources to be able to ultimately get that task handed over, where now they have an owner, they become an owner. And to be able to be part of the deal, that was just so great to be able to mend all those different parts of it. But I think what happened was that I saw, to answer your question more specifically, I began to see a disconnect where, as a realtor, I was wearing these really nice suits and driving fancy cars, and I was picking up clients that worked at Walmart or Target. And I was showing them these incredible opportunities because I knew I was doing the underwriting, the analysis, and many people were kind of thrown off. "Oh, it's too big, it's too small, I don't like the room." People that were living in garage were having a hard time picking a home that they qualified for. And then you'd see the investor, he was just wearing, mismatched socks and t-shirt and a baseball hat, and pulls out of a 20-year-old pickup truck. And he's buying his house cash, but he's turning it into a beautiful home that he could then sell for a profit. And now a community member comes in, they have a new family. So I think for me, being able to see all of the aspects, how it comes together, made me realize that I want to be in the investor front because you have a lot more control. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, but you're going to control that. You're going to be able to find solutions for all of the varying problems. Housing per se, even amidst the crisis that we've had with interest rates going up and so many different scenarios that are occurring with real estate values, depending on where you're at, we still have a housing issue. There's a housing deficit. So we have been able to at least get the people and the players together to try to be an advocate for the industry. So
That's good. And so, I mean, essentially, a little bit of your superpower is being the glue, right? And then being able to find solutions to make sure that all these parties can come together and take down these homes. And the government is really geared towards incentivizing investors and business owners, people who create jobs and who create housing, right? So
yes,
that's always a better side of the fence to be on, just from
absolutely.
that side as well.
Mhm.
So tell me about just your shift, maybe some hurdles you saw. You said you chose the Texas market because of the relationships you already had. How were you able to create relationships in other markets? Were there markets that it sounds like you had investors that were investing possibly in California?
I did have investors and private money lenders that were investing with us and also collaborating with us in transactions down in California. And I think what happened is, reading some books that allowed me to understand how to invest long distance and grab those ideas and then formulate with other people that were like-minded individuals that already had investments out of their area where they live. It's like, what were you doing and how are you doing it? And then what we would do is we would pick an area that we wanted to research and we would go online and we would find the local meetup that was going to be happening at that particular day. And we would go a week prior. If we were going to go in and do 4 or 5 days of research, why not go a couple of days and then go to the meetup and then have a couple of days post research? And we would connect with many of the people on the platform and try to meet with them prior to the meetup to be able to create some better relationships and some more intimate relationships prior to the meetup. And then at the meetup, we were just networking as much as we can, picking up a lot of numbers and names and then following up though. And that's the thing that I think separated us from a lot of people that just attended.
That's good.
We're connecting with people, engaging, and those relationships would lead us to who our realtor was going to be, or who our lender was going to be, and who our contractor was going to be. And then ideas like maybe considering build. Have you ever considered building? It's like, no, I hadn't. Well, this is why I'm building. Maybe you should look at it too. And you pick up these ideas, and then ultimately you start realizing, hey, it's a good idea. We're currently building right now, and I can tell you there's probably one home that we're going to be building in the same amount of time that we're rehabbing another property simultaneously. Wow. So you have a lot more control with the building because you're not working around someone else's canvas. Plus,
that's good.
We're a landlord-friendly state, so in a business-friendly climate, regulation is not like your Chicago's, your New York's, your California. They're a little bit more flexible and are going to work with you, so you don't have all these hurdles that you have to stop, wait for an inspector, come back.
That's good.
Different things. So building is quite different here.
No, and that's Texas. Is that your part of Texas, or is that just Texas as a whole?
Well, I think there are certain municipalities that are a little stricter. And obviously, when you go into the high metro areas like Austin and Dallas and your Houstons, you're going to have a couple more hoops that would be considered normal. In the area that we actually are in, we're in East Texas, Tyler being our base, and 1 hour radius of Tyler. Most of those areas do not require an extensive permitting process. There are a couple of factors that you have to take into consideration, such as the sewage and electrical, for example, but we're able to put in a roof without having to call for an inspector. So
wow, no, that's really good. That's really good because I know now, as you know, the cost of supplies and things, are just supply chain shortages and all that good stuff. The cost to rehab is now starting to fare out with just building it from the ground. So I know that that's an argument for the build to rent versus rehabbing multifamily units. So it's good to hear what spaces that might be a better play than others. So, and you've made that shift.
Yes.
And then while we were doing that, we were also looking at other markets. I had always wanted to learn a little bit more about Tennessee, and we did the same thing. We picked a meetup, a local meetup that we found to be very popular out in Knoxville. They still operate to this day. And we went one weekend, and it was Ida and myself and a partner of mine who started off as an investor. And we all went together. We rented an Airbnb, and there were certain tactful strategies we employed. Like, we don't go to a hotel and stay overnight when we're doing research. We'll pick up bed and breakfast. where there's a host that you could talk to,
Mhm.
or an Airbnb where the likelihood of you being able to communicate with the owner is very, very likely. And in our case, that's exactly
Yeah,
what
exactly
happened.
what happened.
We had the Airbnb owner come over and we started talking and we developed a relationship. We exchanged phone numbers. But what they were to us, for example, was a wealth of knowledge on the market in the area,
That's good.
what parts, and we became a resource for them to understand the dynamics of using bank financing and leveraging other people's money, other people meaning the banks or private money lenders, in order for you to scale a little larger. And so by doing that, we did the same thing. We started buying a couple of properties. We own a property that became an Airbnb in the Great Smoky Mountains. So these are areas that I'm sure were very highly trafficked and visited,
Yeah.
but we didn't even know, we hadn't been there. And then we started to learn a little bit more about the area by being there. And fortunately, the boots on the ground research encompassed about a week, but it's not like we were there every day. You know, once we did the research and we put the players in place, then they were our eyes and ears. A lot of video chats, you know, conversations. We had a very good realtor. That realtor still happens to be the same realtor, you know, 4 years later, just because we've built a relationship with them. They know what we're looking to buy, you know, so they can call and say, hey, I think this is a great idea for you to buy this property, and this is why. So those collaborations are very, very essential.
I love it. I love it. I love the Airbnb strategy. I've never thought about that, but that's that's pretty awesome. And I like staying in Airbnbs because you're just embedded in the environment and the neighborhood. And I do that from a travel standpoint, but I never thought about it from a real estate standpoint because those people usually know a lot about the neighborhood. I mean, they write up these
Right.
long, you know, lists and books and guides for people as they stay. So that's a very, very good strategy. You kind of get embedded in and see, you know, how do you navigate the spaces. And I like the fact that you trade off skills, right? Like, hey, you're going to help teach me about this environment. Hey, we're going to teach you about the private money side, and
Correct.
kind of rolling into that caveat. What are some of the things that you would say what were some of the advice or the things that you would give from that standpoint on, hey, how you can make money using private money? What are some of your takeaways for that?
Well, I think one of the easiest way to assimilate into real estate investing is by understanding the nomenclature and understanding where does an investor, you know, pick their bank and why that bank, and how do they repay, and what instruments do they use. And prior to Ida, for example, retiring, you know, she was a private money lender to our company. And so what we ended up doing is, you know, she was textbook, an opportunity for her to not only invest and grow, and I as an investor to be able to make money with that money, and also capitalize on building and fixing and flipping, or building, fixing, cash out, refi, holding the property, but through the cash out repay our investor. But it is what allowed her to, as a W-2 employee, not to be fully embracing the real estate journey, but understanding it through different caveats, such as the documentation, and then questions and answers, and also the follow-up. So whether an investor is investing $25,000 or $250,000 with us, we're going to be privileging them to a lot of the behind the scenes, the videos, the problem. Hey, we opened up this wall. Guess what? We have asbestos. Or hey, we didn't know we had a foundation issue. Now that we opened up the subfloor, we've got a problem. We're going to attend to it. So our turntable is going to be, you know, 6 weeks extra, things of that nature. And so, like, she, for example, was able to get involved, but not fully immersed. And so now that she has made that transition out, she understands a lot more of the dynamics, because now
That's
she
good.
is a full-time investor on her own, as well as cumulative with our strategies with what we do with our company.
So let's talk about that just as a couple, because I think that's a beautiful thing. When did you make the decision that IDA would invest in the business? And was that your goal, just to learn, or is there like a strategy to help offset taxes? I mean, obviously you're a real estate professional, Joseph. So how did that work with her being a W-2 and you being kind of all in on the real estate professional side?
Right, you wanna-
Well, we had to come up with a plan, obviously, because I was still a full-time W-2 employee, and I want, like I said, I started as a private money lender with Joseph, and I did not want to have to pay taxes at the end of the year. So we had to talk to our CPA. So it was very important that we had a good team with our CPAs and kind of let them know what our ultimate goal was. And so we would meet with the CPA prior to the purchase of the property and kind of give them a feel of what we were looking to do. And he was able to guide us and let us know, okay, well, this is what you guys need to do first, this is what you guys need to do second, and this is how you're going to execute at the end without having to pay taxes. So once we talked with them, then Joseph would then look for a property, and then I would be the private money lender to purchase the property, and then kind of eventually would have enough capital from the money that I initially started to get my own rentals. And so kind of just went through that transition. But then when we would sell the rental, we would deploy it into apartments. So that way, when we would get a K1 is just a document that they give us in regards to the depreciation of the value of the apartment. And then that would be offset my rental income from, and also would then not have me on a larger tax bracket at the end of the year. So it was kind of like a balance of having the rentals, but at the same time within that year selling one off, and then that capital deploying it into multifamily, which would then I would get a negative K1 with the offset all my rental income. So it was kind of just having a structure and a strategy in play.
And how did you guys actually, that's beautiful, by the way. And I think that's great to see that, hey, as couples, hey, we can do this, right? And so is that something that you planned over a certain time period? Like, we're going to one unit, one, asset that we'll take down, and because you kind of have to time it, right?
Yes.
Well, I think that's one of the mistakes that many real estate investors make. They're gonna buy a couple of flips and just sell them, and then they'll figure out how they're gonna do their taxes later. And I understand, especially at the beginning of your career as a real estate investor, you're just so excited to buy a property and fix it, and maybe you made $50,000. You're not paying attention to the fact that depending on where you live, you're probably gonna spend anywhere from 35 to 38% of that, to the IRS. And so, because if you're also living like we were in California, the highest taxed state in the nation, 13.3% of that was going to go to the state of California. And it was so bad, but you kind of don't realize how bad it was till you leave, because you could make no money and you still have to pay a minimum $800 franchise tax fee to the state of California, which I think it's actually higher now. I've moved out, so I don't keep in touch with that. But we were, and I think this is important, we were tactful with our decisions. So we would actually meet with our CPA prior to us doing anything. Hey, this is what we're doing. This is what we're thinking about doing, and where are the pitfalls? And most of the reaction was always, most people come after they've made the decision. Nobody seems to come in prior. So they actually, and I say they because we had multiple, and to this day we have multiple CPAs. Today we have 3. Sometimes I'll ask the same question to all 3 just to see if I make the same answer, and sometimes I get the same answer, but I get a little bit more depth and knowledge and information from one. And so that becomes my mentor when I really want to get a little bit more deeper. But having them be aware of what our goals are was also instrumental. And I don't necessarily think that it's appropriate for us to take and boggle their time between January and April. That's when they're the busiest, the tax season.
Exactly.
So if you knew that after April 15th, they were really going to be slower, that's a perfect opportunity. You've got a whole 8 months to really be able to strategize the whole year and the following year. So we were saying, hey, we're going to go ahead and liquidate our entire California portfolio because we're going to be moving to Texas. What should we look at? And how are we going to be able to determine which properties sell first, in which order, and in which tax year? So we had 2 different entities. Idea and I had one. It took us 3 years to unload every property, because if we did them all in the same year, we were actually going to hurt ourselves with the tax implications.
That's good.
I had some other partners that we had 54 different houses and commercial in one LLC, it took us 5 years to unload all of those properties. And fortunately, we did it tactfully so that we could redeploy the capital, whether it was a multifamily investment in a syndication, or maybe we were buying large scale, heavy burden properties that were in distress, like fire damaged homes. We usually buy at least once a year, although last year we didn't. But prior to that, we were buying about 1 or 2 fire damaged homes, almost intentionally because of all of the rehab that we were going to be able to get, the repairs and expenses and deductions, etc. And so then, of course, you have strategic purchases. Like if I was going to buy a pickup truck, why not buy a pickup truck that Section 179 allows us to deduct 100% in the year that we buy it? So, we bought a truck that was over 6,000 pounds and below 14,000 pounds to be able to maximize. Now, I'm not going to go buy a $60,000 truck to get a deduction, but if I would have bought maybe a 4,000 pound truck, I may not have gotten 100% of the deduction. So these conversations, though, were happening with our CPA, and that allowed us to strategize. Even today, we have met with our CPA right now for what we're planning on doing next year. And some things are going to be automatic because we've already discussed them. Other things are like, hey, I'm about to buy this other property. It's commercial. This is what I'm thinking. And they'll say, make sure that you have it in its own LLC. So we're creating a new LLC for the other purchases. We've already filed. We have an attorney that we use for our filings. So we know that you can go online and spend $200 and you have an LLC, but that is not good advice. You're not going to get someone that's actually going to look at the documentation and say, well, this is what I think you may want to encounter. You're going to encounter some issues. Why don't we do this? Or here's a suggestion. So if you had to spend an extra $800 to save you thousands of dollars in potential pitfalls. So these are the things that we've incorporated, and part of the master plan with getting IDET to retire was being able to have choice acquisitions and passive income and control over our financial windfall, so we knew when would be the appropriate time. Now, she probably could have retired earlier, but it needed to come from her.
Hey, we needed that W-2 income to rest.
Well, the thing is that I already had capital saved, but it was just sitting there. Like it wasn't really growing. The bank wasn't giving you a lot in return. Even the CD account at that time wasn't giving you a lot of return. So then I had spoke to Joseph. I was like, how can I make my money grow? Because I don't want to be in this rat race. I want to be able to retire. I want to be able to have more time on my hands. I want to be on my time, not on my boss's time. So that was very important for me because I wanted to be able to spend more time with my kids, our kids, my mom. My mom's getting older. So I needed to find a strategy. Like, I don't see myself being in corporate America till I'm 62. We should be the ones deciding when we should retire, not society, not your neighbor. You should be the one. So then I told him, hey, I want to be able to do this. What can we do? And that's how I started bringing his private money lender. And I was making my money grow for me while I was still working and incorporating, eventually buying single family residence and kind of building my portfolio. But at the same time, having that structure where we have our team of CPAs of how we're going to do things. But at the same time, it's just kind of just making my money grow while I was still with the government. So like he says, it's very important that we would talk to our CPAs before we actually purchase a property, or even talk to them. How is it going to affect me if I'm a private money lender and I get a 1099? How is that going to affect my income? Like, help us, guide us in that direction too. So it's a lot of planning. It doesn't happen overnight. But like Joseph said, I had to make the decision to do it because unfortunately we're not taught to be entrepreneurs. We're not taught to pursue. It's kind of like you go to school, get a career, get yourself in debt, have health insurance, get a 401k, you're there for 30 years. But your parents don't tell you, you stop dreaming, you stop not living. You're just stuck. You're a robot. And I'm like, I didn't want that. I don't want to be in that environment. I wanted to have control of my time. So I said, I know the perfect person that can help me, because like he expressed, like he's been in real estate since 1995 and I've known him since I was 4 years old. So I was like, who best can guide me or be my mentor in my journey to freedom? So as he was able to guide me, it made it possible for me to be able to retire before the average American at age 62 based on Social Security guidelines. So it's kind of like a journey learning to how to get out of that bubble because you're scared, but then taking that leap of faith, like, okay, I know what the ultimate goal is going to be for me, and this is why I'm doing it. So getting out of that comfort zone, doing something outside of the box, and knowing that what the outcome is going to be at the end, you're going to have more freedom, and you're going to have control more of your money. Not nobody else is going to have control. You're going to have control over your money.
I love it. I love it. I mean, the things that I've pulled out of what you guys have said, just the importance of a power team and having those critical players, whether it's legal, CPA, I mean, contractors. You've done a lot of stuff. You pulled a lot of stuff in-house, and a lot of it you've done just through relationships, right? And the awesome relationship that you guys have been able to build. And obviously, it's taken time. You started in the late 90s or mid 90s. And you've been able to kind of build all of that structure. But you're constantly shifting and being able to set up a new hub. You've been able to do it in Texas. You've been able to do it in Tennessee. And I think that's beautiful that it's like, we found a system. This system works. Let's go to these specific type of markets where maybe smaller, secondary or tertiary markets, and create this hub of power teams. I think that's phenomenal how you guys have done that.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so just
I don't know if there's been go ahead, sorry.
Like when we've gone to our meetups with like in Georgia, we nurture the team that we're in, like Joseph says, we kind of follow up with them. So that we have an existing ongoing relationship with them, and then they can kind of say, hey, this is what's on our market right now, and they could be our eyes and ears while we're away. And it's very important to have that relationship, because that's key, because then they're going to be able to not only help us when we're not there, but they can also tell us, hey, you know what, we know of someone that's interested in probably being a private money lender with your company because they know what you do, and they kind of know a little bit about your story and want to be able to have that freedom eventually. So it's always about nurturing that relationship.
That's good. And I know that you've done a lot of flips, a lot of kind of been in. You take private money in order to get people a certain number of returns and be able to just continue to parlay, not only help create financial freedom for other people, but continue to use that to build your real estate portfolio. How do you manage that that delicate balance, right? Because it's you could go out and get hard money, right? How do you manage that balance between hey, we could continue to do this. You probably have enough funds now where you could do it on your own, right? How do you balance, like, no, we want to continue to create wealth for other people while we go kind of continue to create our own portfolio?
Well, in my case, it's been a transition, because a lot of I've always been in corporate America with the government. I was with them for 22 years, and then I have other relationships out of the government who know that all we do is just work 9 to 5, and we're stuck in a cubicle. So then they see me now and they're like, well, how did you do it? Like, what did you do? And then it's kind of like, well, I surrounded myself by like-minded people who wanted to be out of the rat race at a certain age. And they had to think outside the box, and they had to get rid of that fear of, what's the risk? Everything's risky. I go, but I think it's more risky when you're letting your money being run by someone else, and you don't know where it's being shifted. As opposed to if you have control of your money, you can say, okay, I have an existing relationship with Ivette and Joseph. I feel comfortable with their reputation. They've been doing X, Y, and Z, and it's working for them. If it's working for them, I'm still not ready to leave my corporate job, but how am I going to be able to make double-digit returns on my money? Because I'm not even getting 1% in the bank. And if I could be their private money lender for a project, and they're going to give me double-digit returns, in less time than it would be parked in the CD, it's a no-brainer. It's just a matter of them getting out of their comfort zone and saying, okay, well, now it's not the entity that's going to be holding it like the bank. It's going to be the investor, in this case, Ivan and Joseph's company. And then, like Joseph would say, we give them all their information, and it's protected, secured, and insured. So they have all of that. That's protecting them as well. And it's like, we're not going to lose our reputation over what the money that they're going to invest in our company, because we have the capital to do it on our own. But if you want to partner up with us, then hey, we're willing to help you as well.
And how do you structure that with your investors? Is there a particular way you structure it so to kind of easily explain it to them? Give me the 30-second version if you have it.
we have properties that, let's say we're going to do a flip, and we were going to be buying a property, and we had an investor want to partner with us and invest in that particular project. And this would be a flip, so we're probably going to sell it in 6 to 8 months. And we may do a 1 year term where we borrow the funds secured by a deed of trust against the property, and of course a promissory note. And then they're also on as a loss payee on the insurance. So should the house burn down, we're not going to take the money and run, because their signature is going to be needed to cash the check. And so since the documentation is vetted just like a Bank of America loan, only it's the individual or the individual's entity, it's recorded against the property. So that's where their collateral lies. Now, many of the transactions that we're going to be buying, like a distressed home, are going to be purchased significantly less than what it's worth. It's still going to need some rehab. So I'll give you an example. We have a property that we acquired in the city of Tyler for $196,000 just last month. And that property is worth $331 fixed up. We have a budget of about $50,000. And so we're going to fix it up and put it on the market and sell it. But let's say something goes wrong. Well, that investor doesn't get their money back. They then actually foreclose on the property, just like a national institution would. And of course, they've got their money protected because of the deed that was recorded. And now they have the equity, and substantial amount of equity, actually. And in that case, an investor would actually sell the property as is to recuperate their investment, but they now own the entity. They could then go ahead and finish the property. And
so they're in first position, essentially.
Yes. In situations where we have a gap lender, maybe we get a hard money lender that's going to lend on first position, but maybe we need the funds for rehab or for a down payment and rehab, then in that particular case, they would be in second position. So the only difference on that is that they could foreclose if they're not being paid, but then they're going to have to know that there's a first position lien holder that will be paid first before they get paid.
So, absolutely.
Some of our lenders our most recent one that we did this where we had a lender that was in second position was a property. Now, these are different purchase prices, obviously, than nationally, but we did buy a property for $132,000 that was worth about $185,000. It doesn't need a lot of work, but there's a first and a second. The second has 66% LTV, so there's still 34% equity in the property. So even though they're in second position, they're in a very good, comfortable second position. This isn't like we're borrowing $300,000 on a property; it's worth $330,000. So
exactly, that's good. No, that's good. I love it. Well, guys, this is Lessons into Blessings. It wouldn't be Lessons into Blessings if we didn't talk about the lessons you've learned along your journey. And it's been 20 years, I would say. And so what are some of the biggest lessons or biggest takeaways that you've had to learn? And how have you been able to turn that into a blessing? You can either answer that, or I'll put another one out there. If someone were to, and maybe you can give me both, we'll see. Sure. If someone were to say, hey, I see what they're doing, that's awesome, I want to take the journey that they've taken. What are some pitfalls that you've seen along your journey? Maybe there are also lessons that you've learned that you would say, hey, I would recommend you doing these XYZ things to avoid some of the things that we started out doing because we were just kind of learning along the way.
Well, I don't even have to think too hard, because I can share with you, it's something that I had to learn the hard way. And when I learned it, though, it opened up so many doors. And it's how we operate today. It is, I was trying to do everything. I was trying to put all of the hats. Nobody could do it the way that I could do it. Nobody can do it better than I can. And I'm the only one that's going to be able to do this because apparently nobody in the entire world has figured this out until I did it. That attitude probably, kept me from making a lot of money. Not only money, but time, energy, health, just running around unnecessarily and then not being able to use my cognitive skills for other deals or underwriting or investor relations because I was too busy doing everything for myself. So when I started collaborating with other people, especially like-minded people, then, and this isn't like, well, my brother needs a job, he and I should start becoming real estate investors. That's not, that is another person and you're collaborating, but that's not a like-minded individual other than the family bloodline. The reality is you're going to engage with people that are like you and have some of the same goals and aspirations like you. And maybe there's a balance in the skill set. Someone's really good as a people person and someone else is very, very good with their hands and can be the contractor. You put those two people together and that's great. When we started opening up doors, what I think for me was a really good financial situation was when I had two particular partners in California that we all three formed a LLC that is specific purpose to buy houses, fix them up and flip them, and also be able to keep a couple of choice properties and rent them out. And we could grow our portfolio of wealth that way. Well, we all were like-minded, but it was funny because there was one person that was very analytical. There was somebody else that was great with taxes and books and CPA and dealing with the numbers. And there was someone else that was very good with being able to find deals. And so we all worked off of each other and we were able to grow that into a multi-million-dollar company. So if it was 3 million and I was only a third owner, that's $1 million.
Absolutely.
I'd rather have that. I'd rather be 10% owner of that than 100% of $100,000.
Exactly.
So it was the ability to scale on other people's time, energy, and skill set. I'll give you another example. Like if I had an opportunity of redoing it again, I would probably partner with people without making any without making money. I don't mind, partnering with someone to be able to learn the operation with no financial incentive other than to learn. Because what you're going to learn is going to far exceed what you're going to get paid.
That's good.
And that is something that allowed you to move forward and continue to grow. Plus, someone's going to want to work with you because of the different attitude that you have about investing, and not the what's in it for me. Like, how can we grow together? Let's do business together, because today we're buying these little small green houses on the monopoly board, but one day we'd love to be building the red hotels together.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. I love it, man. Thank you guys for having us on. I love the partnership. I love how you guys work together and you collab together and all the unique things and strategies you've been able to do going into Airbnbs. So I think there's a lot of little nuggets that people will take away. How can people follow up with you guys if they want to reach out?
Well, we'd love to answer any questions or help in any way. We're both on Instagram. I'm joseph.lopez.investor. And my email is my name, joseph@josephlopez.com.
And I'm Aida.multifamily.investor on Instagram, and then just Aida Espinoza on Facebook.
Well, thank you guys for having us on. This is wraps it up for another episode of Lessons into Blessings. Until the next time, stay blessed.